This is Tommy Robinson, the citizen journalist and British patriot who is spending the next 13 months in British jail. His crime? Filming outside on the street, outside of a courthouse where a trial was going on, a trial about gang rape. Tommy Robinson has been leading the charge to expose the gang rapes that have been happening all over Great Britain in recent years as migrants flow in to Britain, creating a clash of cultures that threatens to bring down that great country. Tommy Robinson's case is not going to be heard in the British press because the British government has put out an order restricting British newspapers from reporting on Tommy Robinson's arrest. This is called a reporting ban. This is nothing less than a direct assault on free speech and freedom of the press. Mike Cernovich is now calling for the United States to cut all diplomatic ties with Great Britain until freedom of speech is protected. And we'll touch more on that in a moment. Now, all of this is going on as American media outlets, People magazine and Us Weekly, report on an American woman, Meghan Markle's glamorous marriage to the British crown, with all of the pomp and circumstance that that entails. And yet, beneath those headlines, a very disturbing reality is forming, and it's been forming for a number of years. George W. Bush, after 9/11, told Congress, with Tony Blair in attendance, that America has no greater friend than Great Britain. Well, maybe that's true when Bush and Tony Blair were going to war in Iraq. Maybe that's true when Bill Clinton and Tony Blair were going to war in Kosovo. Maybe that's true when David Cameron was pushing for a war in Syria, telling reluctant members of parliament that they were letting down America by not staging another nation-building experiment in the Middle East. Tony Blair in 2004 opened up Great Britain's borders, allowing for a flood of migrants to come into that great country. In 2003, there were 15,000 EU migrants per year coming into that country. Within 3 years, there were 127,000 per year. 318,000 EU migrants flowed in the first 3 years of Tony Blair's policy. So what is the legacy of Tony Blair's England? We see it today. We see it in the cases of Charlie Gard and Alfie Evans, two innocent children who were left to die in British hospitals while police and government officials stood guard outside. We saw the legacy of Tony Blair's England in the London riots as a society built on clearly defined class structures, subjected to socialism, started to break down. We see it in London Mayor Sadiq Khan's proposed ban on knives. We see it in the fact that the majority of British households receive more government benefits now than they pay in taxes. We see it in the British government betraying the will of the voters and trying to roll back the historic victory of the British people in getting out of the European Union by blocking Brexit from actually happening. We see this legacy in British intelligence compiling the Christopher Steele dossier to manipulate an American presidential election and try to bring down our president, Donald Trump. We see it in the reporting bans that the British government imposes upon the free press. We see it in the no-go zones that British citizens cannot go in London and many other cities all over Great Britain because they are afraid of being mugged, attacked, and raped on the street. We see it in the fact that British courts allow defendants to claim Sharia law because Sharia law apparently takes precedence over the law of man. We see it in the constant push for globalism coming from the British Crown. Now, is it time to discontinue our diplomatic relationship with Great Britain, our great ally in World War II, when they were led by Winston Churchill? Winston Churchill famously said, "The people of Asia were slaves because they had not learned how to pronounce the word no." But perhaps in looking at the situation in Great Britain, it is now more instructive to look at the words of Thomas Paine, the great American revolutionary who stood up to the British Crown, who said, "If there must be trouble, let it be in my day, that my child may have peace."